hear it on the radio and just bam, call somebody up, give me a ride, man, I gotta buy the new Little Richard record. It happened. The 13th. Well, I have cards here to sort of, because I usually, I play music and stuff, and I sometimes will have lists when I go out to play, and it was suggested that I have kind of an order for this. So this is the introduction. I was born in Philadelphia in 1943, and my father was a minister, and my mother played the violin and sang in choirs and played the piano, and I probably got all my music from her. I don't think I got anything from my dad, like music-wise. I think he might have been tone deaf. He wore a hearing aid, and he was a minister, but he would pretend to sing the hymns and stuff, but he was always like a word behind or something, so I know he wasn't really singing. So that was a great lesson to me. I used to see a halo over his head sometimes if I stared long enough, while he was preaching. I don't think if you stare at me long enough and then look up into the sky over Vincent's head, you may see a halo over my head. If so, I guess my job's done. I've been a saint. Okay, church. That's where, the music I heard growing up, I could take my glasses off it. It's like, music in church. And my mother played the violin. She played in Civic Symphony. She played in the Civic Symphony in Medfield, Massachusetts. I remember going to see her play. And here in Gloucester, too, there was a Gloucester Civic Symphony. And so I heard stuff like Rhapsody in Blue and things like that. And I really liked Rhapsody in Blue and a lot of the old standards. But that was a pretty good one. I probably swiped a few of those licks here and there. I never planned on being like a rock and roll singer. I used to love listening to the radio. And I think my first favorite real singer was Johnny Ray. And I used to like to sing his songs. I used to do imitations of Johnny Ray from my brother and sister, and I would roll around on the floor and rip my shirt, because he was like a real emotional performer. He broke down the barrier between like all the old crooners and the rock and roll guys who would have come later and just break it up. And he used to break it up. His big year was like 1952. But I can remember, walking around by myself singing his songs to myself, not to anybody else. If there's anybody else around, I would probably stop. But that I keep forgetting that I used to sing when I was a boy, and I sang in choirs, but that was something different, And then when I got to be a teenager, when I was, we left Gloucester in 1955. Moved to East Providence, and the first two rock and roll songs I ever heard, I heard them here. I was listening to this guy said, you gotta join the National Radio Fan Club, and they were still playing all this, how much is that dog in the window kind of junk. But then they played Fats Domino's Ain't That a Shame, and that was probably the first rock and roll record I ever heard, and Tutti Frutti, and those were like it was like the shot heard around the world. It was just, there was nothing else like it. I liked some swing music. There was a babysitter who left some 78s at our house once. And I'm nervous as crap. And there was this 78 called by Harry James. He used to play with Benny Goodman, the trumpet player. And one side was Easter Parade, which was this schlocky, just schmaltzy thing, which, played a million times too. But that was the big hit. The other side was called Crazy Rhythm. And I just loved the shit out of that one. It was like the introduction on that was just so convoluted, and it just catapulted you into this thing, and it just kept, the beat was crazy. It was called Crazy Rhythm, and that was probably the big record of my life. And the other song I would spin around the room and go dance around the table to was Caroline of the Bells. you know, the da 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 da. So cyclical stuff like that always moved me. And then rock and roll, you know, when that came up on the radio, it was like, I couldn't wait to get home from school and turn the radio on and listen to that. And I guess every 10 years something really fantastic was happening when I was growing up. You know, the doo-wop rock and roll R&B stuff in the 50s, and then in the 60s the British invasion was really exciting. And then in the 70s the punk rock stuff, or whatever you want to call it. And then in the 80s the rap stuff, and then the 90s, you know, it kind of was going a lot of different places. I'm not sure what I was crazy about there. Maybe it was me hearing more world music for a change, perhaps. But where do I go from here? How do you write songs? That's why I'm here. How do I write my songs? If you have any specific questions.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
In your origin story.
All right.
You were born in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then you say, and then when we moved out of Gloucester
Yeah.
in '55 or whenever it was to East Providence, but I didn't catch the transition if you
Yeah,
did,
me
between
neither.
Philly and.
I think we moved from Philly to maybe my aunt and uncle's farm for a while in New Hampshire.
Uh-huh.
They weren't really farmers, but they had a place there. And then Medfield, Massachusetts was the first place I really remember.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, you know, Massachusetts town next to Walpole.
No, I know. Where it
Yeah,
is.
but you know, I had my radio. My grandfather had he was like a ham radio guy, so he always, you know, I had a nice Zenith radio next to my head all the time. I used to, you know, the best days are when you pretended you were sick and you stayed home because you knew something was coming in the mail from H.G. Harris Stamp Company, and you could just listen to the radio all day and get 1,000 stamps for a dime. So it was good. It was a real good deal, and they were real, I think. I filled up whole books for them. This all has everything to do with songwriting, because everything in your life, it goes in, and it comes out in some form, I think. I mean, where else? I mean, I don't I don't really make up stuff. I tried to use a little discipline once. Somebody said you should be disciplined and you know, like try and write a song a day. And you know, they don't all have to be the Mona Lisa, which is a good thought. You know, they don't all have to be masterpieces. You know, some are better than others, supposedly, but you know, those disciplined ones where I just was doing it for an exercise. I only used one of them, called Telephone Sex, and I got most of the lyrics right out of the ads in the newspaper. So that's another good source material. You know, most of the rock and roll in the 50s that I you know, started listening to, they all had saxophone solos. The only guitarists I could think of that meant anything to me were like Chuck Berry, and he was more of a songwriter, and Bo Diddley and Mickey Guitar Baker, but you know, but there's blues guys, but I hadn't heard a lot of that. All the rhythm and blues disc jockeys would play some of those guys, but it was mostly saxophone. And I didn't get to play with a saxophone until 1968. Why am I running out of breath? I was in a band called the Bagatelle, and there was a tenor player, an alto player in that. But now I play with lots of saxophones now. The first record I was ever on, I was in a band called The Lost, and we formed at this college up in Vermont. And
what year was that, Bill?
well, we started playing gigs in 1964. This came out in 1965, and this was a big hit in like Puerto Rico and Worcester and like 4 or 5 places. It's 1 minute and 54 seconds. I'm singing lead on this one.
I couldn't crash a party, so I broke and I cried. If I tried to hitchhike yours, I couldn't give a ride. But I've got to live more than you. I'm the one got busted on the rider that you threw.
A lot of words in this one.
Make the same thought that I got nothing else to do. But listen to words that only come from just a few. But I can scream to sound just like a band. I'll do what I can do and take the thorn out of your hand.
Roland Kirk influence. It's Kyle Garahan.
about all kinds of hassles, castles, things that I preferred. But I'm there and here to stay. If you don't like it, go away. I don't even blame you for not knowing what to say. I know things can't stay bad, that's nothing old and nothing new. I look out of my eyes, not through the holes up in my shoe. So I believe that I won't accent, I won't have to cheat. You won't think it's funny when I buy and set you straight.
So those.
Is that a slide whistle?
Now that's an example of like a fast song with a lot of words. Sometimes you know a slow song you don't have to have all those words. Wow, that's. I'll play a little bit of number 8. Is called Everybody Knows, which was sort of like the second song I ever wrote, or maybe I always say it's the first one. This is a love song. And when you write songs, you write love songs because like your heart is breaking or your heart is bursting or it's unrequited or it's requited or it's over or it's going through stuff, and it's always good source material.
Same album.
Yeah. This album didn't come out until like 40 years after the band had long been gone.
2006.
Yeah, you couldn't put an album out for Capitol Records in the 60s without having 3 hit singles, and then you could put an album out. That was the rule. I still do this one. And I recorded it with 3 different bands. It's about Susie Zuckerman. I think Ted Myers helped me with the chord progression.
So you singing?
Yeah, but the heartache was my own. Do I still sing the same way, you guys? I mean, like that first song.
Did you ever play the first song live? Or did you no?
I did it once in New York for the Yola Tango people.
Oh, right.
They learned it, so I had to do it. Just like Walk Away Renee, they learned that.
How'd it go?
It was good. I had to learn it, you know. Had the lyric sheet. There's a rumor that the real kids are learning this one.
Don't ever approach that stranger.
Funky Potatoes did a recording of this. That's a band that was led by Billy Briggs, who was a keyboardist for the Remains.
Boston area.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still a good song.
You know, Willie, it's really nice that the words are important enough for you to really make them sing so we can hear them all. It's like, I love,
That's because I didn't mix it, I guess.
I mean, that doesn't happen all the time.
You're right. What is it? Well, it's like when I made my first solo album, and I played it for my friend Dirty Eddie. He says, you know, I can't hear the vocals like on the MCA stuff. Or the MCA stuff, the vocals are like, you know, way out in front. And it's like, you know, when I did my solo album, I don't know why I had just bathed myself in all kinds of echo and just murk and stuff. I don't know if I was trying to hide it. I mean, I liked the mix, and it might have had something to do with my you know, alcohol and drug intake. Then I thought it was good at the time, and I stood by it, and I still do. But then the guy that I recorded it with, he remixed the whole thing like 20 or 30 years later for a Japanese company without me there, and did it objectively like just some new band walking into the room, and just, you know, he put things. And I first I said, you know, there's this stuff I buried, but also the stuff I said get rid of. They didn't. I hadn't got rid of them. So I had these long ass endings and just all this just a whole lot of stuff that I thought was too much. And I didn't want to be like, a solo album. It's like, you just, what's the word I'm looking for? Where you just overdo everything. It's like 8-minute songs that could really be better if they were like 3 or 2.5. Like those 2 songs by The Lost. Indulgent, yes.
Right.
Yes. I didn't want to be too. I thought I was, not being, by saying, yeah, get rid of that. Take that ending off. Chop this, chop that. And they put them in again, for the new, it's called Solo Loco Redux. And I love those endings because they were like, wow, this is good stuff. I'm glad they lied to me and said, because that's the way, usually I recorded a bunch of stuff and then a process of elimination. I record a lot and then just throw stuff away. It's like when I was doing that solo album, I'd go in and sometimes I'd play the drums for 20 minutes and then I'd get 2 tracks out of that. And the first I got a 6/8 thing and I got a 4/4 thing. The 4/4 thing ended up as Bebop-A-Lula. I had this beat and then I got this, put the electric piano through a pig nose amplifier, distorted the crap out of it, and it put like 3 layers of this weird piano. And it's just 2 chords and with a couple of little holes here and there. And then somehow I started singing Bebop-A-Lula over it. And it worked, even the little spaces. It all worked, even though I made up some of my own lyrics as it went on. But then I realized all the tracks that I hadn't finished yet, I could sing Bebop-A-Lula over all of these. And it would work. It's like, but and I'm still doing it to this day. But it's a 3-chord song, but I eliminated one of the chords. I don't think I could do it with 3 chords now, but.
Willie, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is that for you, do you write the words first or the melody? And also, is there a standard way to do it, whether or not you do it that way? I mean, I've always wondered about this. Not being
Yeah,
at all.
I thought there was standard ways. I mean, when I first started writing what I thought was songs, it was before I was really into what I thought was poetry. But I probably thought some of those songs were poetry. But I've used forms like blues form where you repeat the first line twice and you come up with a 3rd line. And to write songs, sometimes I don't have one method for any 3 songs, it seems. Sometimes like, I woke up with this melody in my head, or I had a dream about these lyrics, and I did have like one called Ocean's Condo. And made this video called Bass Rocks and stayed in this place on Rocky Neck in this like, where the people stay, it's like, not a hotel, but like a...
Flop house?
Well, no, tourists and stuff. Accommodations. And so I'm, waking up and all these words are coming to me and I'm scribbling them down. And like, and the words were like, go to sleep now, baby, in the belly of a whale, I ain't Sinbad the sailor. I don't want to go to jail. I'm not Jonah the whale and all this stuff. And in the Ocean's Condo, all this stuff. And like, a month later, or maybe what was it, 10 years later or something, the whole thing went into the ocean. So, maybe it was prophetic. So, you gotta watch out. But dreams are good for lyrics. That's one place to get lyrics. And well, these days and for the last 20 or 30 or 40 years, I always have little notebooks and I'm always scribbling stuff down, and I don't know when I'm going to use it. Sometimes, I'll have a melody in my head, not often. And often I'll come up with a chord progression, just some kind of riff or something, and I'll hang on to that until something will work with it. And I've had some forms that I've been playing for years that I haven't recorded yet. And I said, well, I had one called, this name, Yuda. Yuda, Yuda. But now it's Clara. So that's after 40 years. Clara, so glad to meet you. But it might take another 10 years before I get another big revelation. I mean, these are all real people, but I've just switched it along. So, I don't have one method, but a lot of times, the thing that I think that really helped me write songs was after I had finished my stint with the Velvet Underground, which I was in for a little while. I had like enough money to buy a sound-on-sound tape recorder. Once I had that sound-on-sound tape recorder, I could build tracks. I could put a piano down and then go upstairs, and I had a snare drum and a bass drum, and I would overdub those. And every time I would add another percussion thing, I'd sing something, but it still didn't, I'd be making noises or whatever. And I'd build these tracks, and then try this set of lyrics or that, and I never knew what would end up where. So that doesn't answer your question, but a lot of times, I'll have a form, and or somebody say, hey, I got this song, man, you want to put some lyrics to it? Which doesn't happen very often. So yeah, give it to me, and then I'll listen to it 2,000 million times, and then something will be right. Or a rhythm, I have a rhythm or something, more than I'll have a whole song in my head.
Well, to that point, you started as a drummer, right? And Cuban rhythms are very important to you. How important is rhythm to
Rhythms.
to you writing the song? Does that as a
Well,
drummer?
yeah, I write rhythmically. It's like, I used to think when I was reading all this poetry, all this beat guys, but I was reading some of this Robert Creeley stuff, and it's like he's got these really careful, like so many lines. It's like haiku almost, and it's like, oh, I'm counting syllables, and it's got to just be just right. And I was really trying to mathematically put things together. And when I write to a track, I try and make it work that way. But that's good, but it's like not all poetry is symmetrical. Like it's like when I did Vincent's stuff, it wasn't like Chuck Berry or anything where it's just and he's a great example of swinging right along and telling a story. But a lot of my songs, I guess they are stories, and I don't make them up. So it's like I don't write songs. I trip over them. I think it's like they're real people. A lot of them, and I just happen to write about them, and then say, well, Dirty Eddie's my best friend. It sounds like a square dance, dude. And I'm making it up that way, and then it comes out on the record, and it's like, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, wham, and it's like Dirty Eddie's my best friend. It changes up when you show it to somebody else sometimes, but originally I thought it was going to be like a square dance or something. Like, oh shit, but.
Willie, how do the bands that you play with sort of affect the final arrangements like that? Do you actually invite people to contribute? Do they just say, hey, I think we should do this here? Or?
Well, when I was in the Lost, I was kind of like the utility rhythm guy. I only sang maybe 2 or 3 songs. I did harmony, and I played clavs, I played kunga drum, I played cowbell, I played tambourine. They finally got me piano when they realized I really could play it, because we did a commercial. Our manager had us do the old Gillette look sharp, feel sharp, be sharp thing, and we made a track in Revere, and said, wow, he can play the piano. So they got me a Hohner piano, and so I started playing electric piano on stage. But and I was playing, and then after the Lost, I played drums in a band. I didn't want to, somehow I just needed to change.
Did you ever play guitar? Or do you write on a guitar at all?
Well, in the bunker, Dirty Eddie and I, we'd jam in this place, and it was like for a shoe factory or a leather factory or something. And so all these boxes, and we had all these boxes piled, and you have to crawl inside all of these boxes. It was like a little hut, and he had his drums in there, and somebody had left an acoustic guitar in this cellar, and so I would pick that up, and I sort of figured 3 chords, and it was kind of bluesy, so I'd bang on it, but it's like, and for lyrics, it was like, there was a pornographic novel, and so I'd use that for lyrics, which is always good. I mean, some of my lyrics are somewhat pornographic, but, it's like this one had, I don't know, how deep can I go here? Let me see. Some of my songs have like, if you don't write them out, people don't know what you're singing about. It's like my song Kerouac. When I first was playing that for people, they thought, oh, Cadillac. Oh, Caroline. Oh, and Johnny Thunders, the New York guitar player, he was a friend of our house, this Ready Teddy house, and he came in, and I had just got my box of 45s, and we're playing them because we're just like, hey, this is it, Mass Ave and Kerouac. Played Kerouac for me. I said, Kerouac, what's that, cough syrup? Because there's a line in the song, you're on the top of my shelf. So, I see medicine cabinet, Kerouac. It made perfect sense. So that was closest. But, so, it doesn't matter what your lyrics are sometimes. If you write them out, it spoils it because people come back at you with like, oh, that song about that, and you go, oh yeah, And like I have this song called "Looking Like a Bimbo," and I played this biker bar with the Rhythm Assholes, which was a famous Beverly band that I was in for a while, and there was these bikers, and they said, "Do that song, feeling like a dildo." I knew what they meant, and we just played it right away. So people hear what they want to hear. It could be very innocent or not. It could be totally not innocent.
Willie.
And I have some totally not innocent ones that are. You just change the titles from something that sounds nasty to something sweet, and it gets by. That's a good trick too.
Willie.
What?
So how exactly do you take your stories and everything, then put them into lyrics?
Well, it's like these I made a list of some of the, where'd my glasses go? Real people songs, and it's like it's trial and error to get the right chords sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have a melody and stuff like that. I mean, where's the list? Here's the list. Real people, like real things. Like it's almost like, oh, this is like a whole bunch of stuff, and there's more. I know there's more. I just looking through album covers. Dirty Eddie, real person. Ted Dunford, he's a drummer friend. Preacher Jack, I just finished one about him. He's a real guy.
Friday night.
Taxi Stand Diane was a girl who hung around and liked cab drivers in the Hyannis. I heard, and then Shopping Cart Louie. I heard about him when I went to Lowell to play, and he was a street guy that got murdered by some kids for who knows what, and so I wrote a song about him. My Friend Swine was my friend Swine. That was his real name too. His real name was Stephen Lovelace. He had a band called the Lovelace Lads, which I was an honorary drummer of, and I would sing with sometimes. And Scott Barronwell was in that band sometimes, and Matthew McKenzie. Fred Buck's Footsteps. He's a hero of mine in Gloucester, and that song is that's not a song even. It's like it's like a friggin' novel. It's so long, and it was just all improvised. But I had two chords, which was Fred Buck's Footsteps, my friend. Fred Buck's Footsteps, which is look at your love life or something. A lot of times progressions can be stolen from somewhere or borrowed. It's like some of my more famous songs. I like to use the word steal, but it's like that place on Kenmore Square, the Rat. I have a song called "At the Rat," but in the '50s it was "At the Hop." So people could say, "Oh yeah, right, Willie," but and I have a song called Mass Avenue. So you can take forms. I just think of them as ready-mades, and you can. It's like in the '60s and the '70s. Sometimes you have to play you're playing in bars, and you got to play some covers because you can play your original stuff all night, and they're going, and then you play Louie, and then you just think you guys are gods, and they just love it, and I can see because they just know that one, and then maybe in the '70s. We're playing all these original songs, so we're sneaking them in. I joined this cover band because I liked some of the musicians in it, and there's a girl singer, and she just split after a while because we're working more of our own material than Matthew McKenzie and me, and Scott Barronwell. But what am I leading up to? Jesus. About material.
Can you play a song that
This is
everybody knows?
Oh yeah, the song in the early '70s, the one that's where they would start bowing and saying, "You guys are tremendous," would be we'd do Grand Funk Railroad, one of theirs, and it was fun to do this stuff, you know, there was an I am your captain and some kind of bullshit. But like, you know, people were digging it, so it's like, you know, that's fun, making people smile, you know. And you can do it with your own songs, it's even better. But, you know, a lot of times it's ready-made. It's like, you know, the Beach Boys. Did a tour of the Beach Boys in 1966, the Lost did. And, you know, they have a lot of famous songs. And one of them is Fun, Fun. Fun, 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 and I don't know how it goes. It's like, fun, fun, fun to get, Daddy takes your T-bird away, yeah, blah, blah, blah. So I did my East Coast version of it, but I call it Mass Avenue. So it's like, you know, instead of like, you take your daddy's car and you go to the hamburger stand now. You know, whatever, you know. It goes, and I always mess up the chords on this every time I play it, even to this day. Maybe because I didn't write this progression, or because, well, I wasn't drunk when I recorded the track. I was drunk when I did the vocal on it, the original vocal. And it's like, wow, he's got quite a technique on this one. Because it's like, oh my. I'm weaving in and out from the microphone. And it creates a certain aura. And Lester Bangs liked it a lot. And he called my singing sleazy, which I took as a really good compliment. I liked what he would say about me.
Would you talk about how drugs and alcohol have affected you?
Sure. I drank maybe for the first 20 years of my career, and then I stopped drinking in '85. But I have notebooks, and I have boxes full of notebooks of scribble that, you know, when I was still drinking, I'd go to these bars and I would just, you know, drinking whiskey and cheap whiskey and scribbling. But most of those scribbles, I can't read them for one thing. And a lot of it is just, it isn't so good. I mean, I don't think I've used too many of those drunken things. Other drugs, marijuana is a good one for connecting the dots. I think it just puts a bright light on things sometimes. But I'd recommend that over the alcohol as far as composition. You know, it's good. I mean, the first time I probably got high with musicians in a car, and it's like every line coming out of me was rhyming and stuff like that. It's like, you know, it didn't happen all the time. So maybe you're always chasing that, like, oh, I'm a great songwriter now, kind of thing. So
when you stopped drinking, you didn't have like a problem connecting with your creative side.
Well, there's no creative side. I told you, I just the songs are just trip over them on the street.
Well, that's creative.
They're real people. I mean,
So you didn't have any problem tripping over them on the street then? Let me put it that
no.
way.
People weren't tripping over me.
Have you ever had a period where you weren't writing and you were?
Oh
writing?
yeah. Well, sometimes it's like, you know, when I decided to be a front man and do and I put that 45 out. I didn't have a band when I put out Mass Ave, but I was sitting in with all these bands because they're all my friends, and I'd sing 2 songs with this band because they were easy to teach them, and I'd sing with this band and that band. I was singing with a half a dozen bands. And then one of the managers of one of the bands says, "Willie, you sleazebag, why don't you get your own band?" You know, and then there was a battle of the bands, and then I borrowed a whole band and used them, and we won the battle of the bands, and they decided to stay with me. So it worked out. But when I decided, you know, I don't know if I decided or it was just circumstance that I was, you know, I mean, I sang lead in The Lost, but the Boom Boom Band was the first band where it was all material that I had written, and I sang all the songs. So that was like a first time with that kind of deal. But, you know, most of the songs that I sang with that band, I wrote before I met them. So I had all this material, so when I met them, I just, you know, I taught them, you know, enough songs so we could do the Battle of the Bands, and then we just kept going, and I had more. And so for that first, as they say, you know, your first album, you know, you wrote it takes your whole life to write that, and then the next album's harder. But I mean, I had all the material already, but then I started writing more songs when I had the Boom Boom Band. But 3 years was the longest for any band, you know, except for the Persistence and Memory Orchestra. And I think the secret to that was that we never saw each other. We didn't live together, and we just got together to record or play shows and just played music together. There wasn't all this hanging out stuff and starving together and all that, and all that social stuff. So I think, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's happened that way.
How did the Velvet Underground thing come up, and how did it fall apart, or how did it go?
Well, I was in a band called the Grass Menagerie. And Grass Menagerie, yeah. It was 1967. And
Willie, when did you move back to Gloucester and why?
why? Had to get out of Somerville. No, I left Somerville, but I was in Gloucester when I was a boy, but-
K-Band rules, baby.
Yeah, and I love Gloucester, Washington Square. But
What was the year that you moved back?
moved back in
Yeah.
June of '97. I know there was a question about the Velvet Underground. There was a guy named Doug Yule who was one of the many revolving players in this Grass Menagerie. I was the drummer, and he came in as a bass player, I think. I mean, it was like 2 or 3 guitars. It was like, man, this is awful. I mean, guys would come in and out all the time. It's like teaching the material to the next guy. It was really a drag.
Is he a New York guy?
No, he was Boston at the time. And
Because I've got Max's live at Kansas City. J.J. Cale's on, but are there Yule brothers?
yeah, that's Billy Yule. He ended
Yeah.
up playing drums instead of Mo
Yeah.
when she was
So
having her baby.
Yeah, they're on that.
But-
yeah.
He had me come into the band. He said, we gotta, Lou Reed had left. And he got Walter Powers, who was in a band, 2 or 3 bands with me. He was in the Grass Menagerie and he was in the Lost. First they got Walter to come in and play bass because John Cale left. And then, so, okay, there's 2 guys from Boston I know there. And then Sterling Morrison left at one point. And he said, let's get Willie. So it's like, come on, man, you gotta join. We got this tour, and we need, it'd be like old times, because we used to jam and stuff. I said, yeah, it sounds good, but like you should change the name of the band because Lou Reed's not there.
Yeah.
But they never did that, and it almost didn't matter, which was weird. But most of that material, it came out another, like 20 or 30 years later. On a Japanese label and a huge box set with like wonderful color photographs. The photographs are great, but I used to get cassettes of all these gigs that we played. There were all these schools in England and stuff, and I just, I didn't just, when I joined that band, I didn't know the songs. I barely knew what the Velvet Underground was about. I have a sheet of paper. I said, I'm begging Doug, just give me the chords on some of these songs since we're going to play this festival, And so at one point it says, fuck it, fake it. And it's like, the D to this or that. So I got little, which didn't do much good because it's like, I have to look at my fingers because I never learned properly in reading music. So it's like, so I had a cheat sheet kind of, but I was ending up just, doing all kinds of noise and, my jazz influence and just playing like free sometimes. But, I would listen to these and I didn't like them, but I'm softening up and I can listen to sometimes. There's a song on there that, that I just recorded, finally really recorded. It's a good one. But I mean...
Oh, sorry. Am I interrupting you?
I need questions.
What came first in your life, music or words?
It's I think music more than the words. I mean, I always pile up lyrics in different notebooks and stuff, and I'll have a progression because I had that tape recorder, or I could record something and then just listen to it and say what will fit. And so it's like matching up stuff. It's not all together. It's very rarely that I have the words and the melodies and all that come together. And then for a long time, I probably wasn't even thinking about melodies. I was, because I was listening to all this rap music and everything, and it was more just rhythms and stuff. But I know how important melodies are, and well, my stepfather was a musician, and I play my stuff for him, and he liked the ballads. He said, it's the slow, pretty songs. Those are the ones. I was like, okay, that's what he always said. No matter what I played for him, I could, And he's probably right. I mean, I don't know with my reputation, and some what I'm known for is slow ones or fast ones. But I tell you, it's the slow ones that get people more than the fast ones, because it just happens that way. I think that's the way people are. There's rhythms, but it's the slow, pretty ones always. And you can do a slow, pretty one on top of a fast beat too. You can mix it up.
Do you ever
Mix it up is a good thing.
Do you ever get like nonsense rhymes in your head? Would,
Well,
start things?
sometimes I know what you mean, and then write real words later.
Yeah.
I haven't done that method, but I think sometimes when I was the front man and all that, my best moments were nonverbal. They weren't the words; they were the heavy breathing and stuff like that, and just yelps and moans and groans, and totally nonverbal. Well, James Brown is a good example of how abstract and how great. I mean, sometimes it'd be just one chord or two chords, and he's just screaming or moaning, and it's like, this is music, and this is fantastic. You don't need the verse, chorus, verse. You don't need these formats. But I used those formats on a few songs, but those are the ones that I kind of lifted. Like fun, 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 and I wrote my own lyrics to it. So this is the East Coast version. But I think my masterpiece from the '70s was on the Live at the Rat album, and it's just a thing called Pop Tune, which was P-U-P, puked up poochie panty tune. What they called it, pop tune on the French albums. But and I had a beginning and I had an end. It's Latin break that I taught the Boom Booms, and they got the break at the end. We didn't get the breaks at the beginning, but it's a good thing because the rest of it is wonderful, and it's all just kind of improvised, and a lot of that is just, not that I recommend getting drunk and going out and performing, but I know I probably was pretty loaded, but I can always tell when I listen to the my drinking years music. I used to throw away a lot of these cassettes when people would give them, because like, oh Jesus. I thought I had a style, but I sounded like Gabby Hayes. I sound like I had a mouthful of potatoes, and I'm going, and I thought it was wonderful, but it really was awful. So I would just throw away half. If it's something like the Whiskey a Go-Go we played, had to play 2 sets a night. First set was great. Second set was like after an hour, another band and people and just all kinds of shenanigans. So that second set was always like, hold your breath. And they'd even take my piano out of the mix. It was like I was playing all the wrong chords. That second set stuff just didn't work for me. Luckily, as time went on, people didn't have to play like 2 or 3 sets. They could just go on and play 20 minutes or for one set. And even if you're half shattered, it might come out all right. But and I don't recommend heavily. I mean, when I was in the '60s, I used to drink wine. I used to drink whatever. I used to mix Scotch and Coke because John Lennon did, and then whiskey and Coke because P.J. Proby did. And it's like you get your heroes, and all my heroes were alcoholics and drug addicts. So you had to try everything at least once or twice or more.
Well,
But I don't recommend that for everybody. But you just got to do what you got to do.
So your newspapers, your walls, your movies all rely a lot on collage and sort of patchworking the interesting bits together. Do you do the same thing in your songwriting?
Yeah. A lot of the stuff in the last 20 years or more just put together like puzzles, a piece of this. I mean, I'll go in like with Tony I'm recording at Bang a Song Studios, and it's underneath CVS. It's like 2 minutes from my house, and we'll make a track. The tracks would be like, I'll go in and they have a set of drums there. I can play drums, so I play drums for 20 minutes or something, and we'll cut a piece out of that and make it a loop out of it, and add a piano to that, and you got a groove, loops are the thing these days. And then I'd try this or that, and I'd take it home and say, and I'll try this, and this doesn't work at all. So it's the thing on the other page that works. So it's all kind of chance, except for the new one with the Raz tones, where I kind of had songs when I went in, which was different for me. I mean, I had songs when I went to the studio. You had to, in the '70s and in the '60s, but from the solo day, when I started making solo albums and stuff, I was going in and screwing around and finding stuff and making stuff up. And, you know, it all depended on and sometimes I'd make a track and sing a vocal over it and then take the whole track out and just, I have this one called Up for This, which is like 4 lines, and it's like, I didn't grow up for this. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to look at this. I didn't grow up for this. And I had this line like a Little Richard, do, 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 like a whoa, 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 miss. And I had that for a bassist, and I played the drums, and I had, Peter Dayton was coming in to pay a bill. I had him play guitar on it, and I had bass, and it was all normal. And I listened to it and said, take all that stuff out. And he had this synthesizer, and it made noises like mosquitoes and insects and just this weird shit. I said, yeah, let's use that. And took out the steady rhythm and just had like a stop rhythm, like boom, doom, 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 boom, doom, doom, doom. So it was like this staccato stop rhythm instead of a flowing rhythm, and it made the lyrics stand up more, but it's like, you know, a hornet's nest in the background. But, you know, it sounded great to me. And he didn't really remix it too much. Next. I think I'm rolling here. I don't know how I'm doing. Am I answering any questions about my secrets, dark secrets?
I've got a question. I just had this epiphany tonight at the Gloucester Writers Center that the confluence of rhythm and blues and rock and roll is Americana. But I think you'd probably be best known for the Boom Boom Band,
right?
Which is probably punk. Is that punk rock?
You know, they were calling it. I mean, every band in Boston was different from it, just like in New York. Punk was a term like, you know, like a fad term when they started using it. But you know, I don't know. It was I accepted some of that. Because maybe because of my bratty attitude, you know, which I was a mess during that first second phase of my you know,
musical
incarnation. Yeah. I mean, I was bad. I was so, you know, they, as long as they're always gonna, but I'm really avoiding that question.
Well, the reason that I ask is because Americana roots music. Oh,
that's what
yeah,
I love.
That's Nashville and Muscle Shoals,
Well,
but
I
find that this era,
I always thought my
it's
stuff,
got its practitioners.
My stuff is East Coast. I was always East Coast as opposed to, like, because when we went to California, it's like, who are these guys kidding with this, you know, Eagles crap. I just didn't like any of that stuff.
Yeah, I don't
really.
blame you,
You know, I liked it. It's like the New York bands were better. Like the Rascals were better than the Beach Boys. But I liked the Beach Boys. That was a secret thrill. But you know, I still like the Beach Boys. Well, I don't know about that now. They're not doing much.
They're playing tomorrow night at the Big Casino.
I played there with the Grass Menagerie.
Really?
Jeez.
And
they're on the way down, huh?
I think rather than being a punk band, Willie has a punk sensibility where it's
Yeah.
more grassroots. I mean, to take what you're saying, I think it's more pulling from all the different traditions and not, I mean, the punk sensibility is about just grabbing and using whatever is good.
Yes, and sort of rewriting the rules. It's like, well, the record companies really don't care about me, so it's like, well, fuck them. You know, I'm going to put out my own records. And that was very important to me. You know, and when I put out Mass Ave, it was just me and maybe one other band or 2 other bands that were making their own 45s. I mean, everybody thought the dream is to get on the big labels, but, you know, I'd been on 3 of them in the 60s, and it wasn't like the end of the world. I mean, you ended up fighting with them, and you hating the mix of your song and stuff like that. So, you know, with the so-called punk movement, people was starting to get more control over the product, if you want to call it that.
How about the avant side, Willie? I sort of, in Persistence of Memory and in the
Well,
I start hearing a pretty outside thing, particularly in the lyrics, and I wonder,
lyrics,
think about
really?
that, or some of them.
I didn't think about the lyrics, but with that band, the drummer could play just a variety of beats, whereas most of the rock and roll drummers that I played with are all great, but they could only play certain beats. But this guy could play African beats, he could play samba beats, and he could play jazz. So it made me sound great. I mean, I'm always just me with my lyrics and my voice, and it was just changing the whole environment for me. And I also had to get away from guitars for a while because my hearing was shot and so forth. And it's like, you're playing loud music and that's great, but it's like when you start a song and people are leaving the room, it's like really kind of counterproductive, and that would happen. It doesn't happen now because everybody wears earplugs and the sound guys are all deaf too. And they all wear earplugs. That's, I guess, a joke, I don't know. But it was, when things are too loud, it's not pleasant. I mean, I'd be playing on stage with some of these bands, and my piano's in one spot, so while I'm playing that, maybe I'll have to the guitar amp's behind me, and the sound check, and that soon as, and I love them all dearly, but it's like the sound guy says, oh, you got to turn that amplifier around, you got to put a coat over that. Say, yeah. As soon as the gig comes, like, just doesn't matter. It's just put everything on 10 and play for the night. And it's okay while you're on stage. But the sound checks were hell. I hated sound checks because that's when I could feel all the loud noises. So I kind of got away from the guitars, but then when I got back into it, it's like there's nothing like it. There's nothing like the power and the glory of all that massive noise, and it's your noise, So it's like, but I think I just had to give it a break. But it made a man out of me. It made me play with two hands on the piano and stuff like that.
Kind of personal question with you.
And you couldn't hear it with all the guitars.
Your dad, as a preacher, did he ever see you play?
No, he died when I was 13 or 14.
Did the church and that experience have any influence on your music at all?
Well, I liked a lot of those hymns.
Yeah.
But, and it wasn't like he was into rock and roll. I can remember driving back from Cape Cod once, and maybe it was 1956 or 57, and Roll Over Beethoven came on the radio, the great Chuck Berry song. He turned the thing up, and he was like beating on the dashboard and stuff, and he was digging it. It's like, holy shit. So, he never put it down or anything, So I'm grateful for that. But should I play you something? Play a song or play or illustrate something? I had all these.
Are you feeling any more questions?
Huh? No, I don't. I wish I could. So so you write
Mass
about.
Habit? There we go.
It's that one. It's like if I could play it without messing it up, it would be really great. So it's like if the less chords you put in the song, the less mistakes you'll make. That's a good tip. And nowadays it's like, well, since punk rock and all that, it's like you didn't have to have all these, It's okay to just play 3 chords or 2 chords. Right now with world music, it's like a lot of this, like Indian music and it's African music, and it's like it's the rhythmic textures, you really don't need a lot of chords. Sometimes I think people I love Hoagie Carmichael. He was like, I loved watching him smoke cigarettes and play the piano in the movies. The introduction to Stardust has more chords in it than my entire repertoire. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I love Hoagie.
Are there any contemporary acts that you like?
Yeah. Can't think of them right now.
But they're out there.
Usually it's the women singers that get to me more than the guys. For some reason. I like that. What's her name? Lord. I like a couple of hers. She has good lyrics, but I never really heard any more than 1 or 2 songs. But I buy a lot of stuff and I bring it home and I play it from Mystery Train. But it's like I listen to everything. It's like I don't listen to the radio, like college radio, like I used to. I used to listen to it every morning and every afternoon. It's not important to me anymore for some reason. I don't know what it is.
It's changed.
The things I listen to are usually the things I'm working on.
With your lyrics, there's a lot of place and real life people. Is there any poetry that influences your lyrics? I mean, I think of you kind of as a New York school type lyricist. I mean, like the poetry
Well,
of you know, just putting
Yeah.
the stuff you know, the people you know,
Yeah,
not
well,
doing.
Waiting
well,
for my man.
well, you know, reading guys like Jack Kerouac, he's writing about his neighborhoods and things like that, and it's like saying it's okay to write about your life. And you know, the big guy, the big O, was always writing about Gloucester, so it's like that's the only reason I could continue reading him, because I didn't understand most of it, but I knew where the Sawyer Free Library was, and stuff like that, and, you know, so it kept me going, and I ended up recording 2 of his poems. I recorded one of his poems, Garrett Lansing poems. It's like, and I did a whole album and I never thought I was going to be doing anybody else's stuff, you know, but it was like, you know, it happened. It was suggested to me. And it's like, you don't always take suggestions, like you said, collaborating with other people with your materials. Like, you know, I had these you know, I have these songs and I'll show them to the band, and if they want to change anything, oh, Jesus, this is my baby. This is a masterpiece. Change what? You know? And then maybe 3 days later, it's like, oh, that's a good idea. You know, and then you accept it, but like, not right away. It never works.
Who would you like to collaborate with most today?
I don't know.
Anybody come to mind?
I mean, real people? Collaborate with a lot of ghosts.
Yeah, real people are not real people sometimes.
Probably like to collaborate maybe with like more like non-musicians, because it would be different. You know, but I mean, I don't think about it. But you know, that's the stuff that's usually good, is the stuff you don't think about, stuff that just happens.